it's raining today again, although it is drizzling a little bit, so it might actually stop. And what did I read today? I guess this was kind of interesting. There was actually two pieces of news that was related to this in a sense, where it dealt with various places restricting the airspace from people capturing, I guess, news. And because of that, people were fighting back. How about this first one here? It says, Texas broadcasters speak up against drone restrictions. They said a state law forbidding the use of UAVs by journalists is unconstitutional. The Texas Association of Broadcasters is supporting a lawsuit that challenges a prohibition against using drones in news gathering in that state. The lawsuit, filed last November, is by a Texas news photographer. It challenges the constitutionality of the Chapter 423 of the Texas Government Code, which, quote, broadly prohibits the use of drones by journalists in public airspace, yet arbitrarily exempts other members of the public from these proscriptions, the brief argues. That's kind of interesting. Is that true there? It says TAB said the law is, quote, speaker-based regulation that discriminates against the press and violates the U.S. Constitution by harming the free flow of newsworthy information to the public. TAB said it was joined in filing the amicus brief by the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press and 44 additional entities. The brief outlines the public benefit of technology when used for news gathering, its similarity to other technologies such as news helicopters, and how the restrictions in states' law constrain the devices used in news gathering while permitting other non-journalist speakers to deploy the devices at will. That is kind of crazy to think about, where you block them out specifically, like you can't capture it for, I guess, documentation and news purposes. It has to be, in my opinion, if it's not safety related in any way, then why not? In my opinion, it's absolutely no different than somebody just taking out the camera and filming the situation. I mean, it could be safer, you could argue too in many ways. If it's a situation that's really violent, the guy could stand way back, just fly up in the air and capture everything. Now, in relation to that story, apparently in Australia, they actually restricted the airspace from media as well because of things like all the lockdowns that are happening apparently and the protests as a result. This one here said at first, police banned footage of protest crackdown in Melbourne. The Civil Aviation Safety Authority declared Melbourne CBD airspace a no-fly zone this afternoon at the request of Victoria Police to prevent media drones and helicopters from capturing aerial vision of the anti-lockdown protest crackdown as the protesters were being cornered at the Shrine of Remembrance. According to the CASA directive, nothing but police helicopters can fly within 3 nautical miles of Melbourne. It is not clear why the no-fly zone has been introduced. So it's kind of interesting there. People would argue it's their right to basically be able to capture the event and see what's going on, document it, and they actually fought back. Like this update here said, media companies successfully challenged ban on aerial protest telecasts. 3 media companies have successfully challenged the temporary airspace restrictions that would have prevented them from telecasting live footage from above Melbourne CBD of the ongoing protests that have rocked the city. Imagine that, actually. It makes me wonder why more people don't challenge stuff like that. Like here in Canada, remember there was that huge news about the residential schools finding all those dead bodies, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm banning everything from flying, even like toy drones, for example. Like, I would argue there, wouldn't you want more people to actually document the situation? So it makes me wonder if they actually challenged that legally here as well, whether or not that would have been the case. Because that is a bit scary too, if you can just arbitrarily say, oh, that's it, I don't like you capturing this, it's banned. Like, it has nothing to do with actual safety. In general, I always find it strange when people are so for in terms of people being banned because they don't like something. I mean, don't you think in the long run what that actually means? I mean, with that thought, it reminds me of this story I read. Recently, there was that movie Shang Chi that was released, and it was really huge. And apparently, it's been banned in China. Now, this one here says, why is China banning Shang Chi, Ultraman, and K-pop accounts? There is a huge cultural shift occurring in China that will make it a lot more difficult for Hollywood studios to tap into the country's sizable market. That's due to the Chinese Communist Party and its General Secretary, Xi Jinping, who have taken a strong stance against the likes of Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings, Ultraman, and K-pop. At first glance, none of those things has much in common, other than the CCP has taken steps to remove them from Chinese media, if not outright ban them. The reason being is that they don't conform to the party's ideal for the Chinese people. I believe the story in general relates to that other article I read where they were banning things like they mentioned, the K-pop, because males don't seem, I guess you could say, masculine enough. But it makes you think, just in terms of people saying, oh, it's okay to restrict this and that just because you don't like it. Doesn't it basically lead to stuff like this where you're giving them permission, like slowly to say, okay, we'll take this away, we'll take that away. It might not be related to you now, but it will be afterwards if we don't like it. I mean, that's the dangerous thing. So it's always surprising to me when people are so biased in that sense and they don't look at the big picture, where if you're actually agreeing with them to be able to restrict things that don't really have anything to do with safety or anything like that, it's more about taking people's rights away. Imagine if it happens to you afterwards. I mean, to me, you should stop it from happening in general until stuff like this occurs. And the last thing I read, which is kind of fun, imagine this, growing a humongous pumpkin. Look at this. It says, giant pumpkin grower in Richmond may break BC record this week. Dave Chan has grown a giant gourd he hopes will finally beat the BC record this Saturday. According to this anyways, what's like the weight? It says, on paper, the pumpkin is 200 pounds over the previous BC record. This one is measuring 1,734 pounds and most growers think it will weigh heavier than the charts. How's that even possible? That's one heavy pumpkin, isn't it? Imagine having that for Halloween outside. What do they do with that afterwards? Do they actually eat it? Apparently it says here they're bringing it to some kind of competition happening in Portland. That's a huge pumpkin, man. Looks like the rain stopped for a brief moment. Alright, see you guys later.